So yeah, we're going to be talking about some endpoint protection stuff, and this is specifically going to be related to Microsoft Defender. So hopefully Don Lewis gets the reference there, and that's why he enjoyed it. Elmer Fudd, if for those of you that grew up on Looney Tunes, that's the song that he would sing when he was hunting that wascally wabbit Bugs Bunny. So he would say, "A hunting we will go." Any case, what we're going to talk about is, what is the problem with endpoint protection right now? What are the challenges that we see from a security perspective? How does Microsoft Defender change the approach to protecting your endpoints and the data on those endpoints? And then lots of demo. Right. So what's the problem? So the problem is that defenders think in lists and attackers think in graphs. And as long as that's true, attackers win. Now, what this means is that when you, as a defender, right, you're trying to protect your network, generally the way we think of things is we lay out a list of assets within our organization, and we figure out how we're going to protect those assets from the outside in, maybe. Right? So we say, we've got a firewall, and we're going to block access to that asset, definitely at the firewall level. If they get into this level, then they have to go through this IDS sensor. If they go, if they get past that, then they have to get to this. If they get past that, then they have to get to this. So we think very linearly about how an attack will progress. The problem is attackers don't have that list. They have no idea what assets you have. I mean, they may have some idea of some of the assets, otherwise they wouldn't be attacking. But they don't know necessarily how they're laid out. They don't know who has access to those assets. All they know is they need to get inside. And so they think in terms of graphs. In other words, as long as I get inside, what are the other pieces that I can connect to, that I can launch myself onto, that will give me a stepping stone to all these other pieces that I eventually want to get to. So it's a difference in thinking that's causing this difference in the way that we defend things. So this kind of just illustrates the problem, right? We build our defenses in such a way that we think this is kind of like the when there's a penalty kick in soccer, right? This is how they defend the goal for a penalty kick in soccer. They line everybody up, and then the guy tries to kick the soccer ball towards the goal, and they're able to block it. But the problem is, again, that's not necessarily how the attacker thinks, right? So the attacker, if I can find my arg. The attacker thinks this way. They're thinking more in terms of how somebody would get into the goal, from a traditional perspective, right? How do you go around the different defenders and then get to the goal? So it's a challenge and a difference in mindset between the way that we're creating this defense and the way that the attacker actually approaches the attack. So you saw something similar to this in the previous presentation where I talked about the attack kill chain. And the attack kill chain is still the same, right? But realistically, the attack goes across a variety of different aspects of your network. So it attacks applications, they're attacking devices, they're trying to compromise your identity, and then finally they're trying to get to your data. Now this is kind of an interesting aspect. For many years, right, the goal was, protect your global admin, protect your domain admin, and certainly you want to do that. But when you think about an attacker's perspective on things, Gaining global admin or domain admin is a means to an end. It is not the goal, right? The goal is the data. And if getting domain admin credentials or global admin credentials allows them to reach that goal, then that's great. But there could also be an identity that has far fewer privileges than domain admin or global admin that still has access to that data. It could be a SQL database owner that has access to this data. They may not be a global admin or anything. They may just be a server admin. And if you can compromise that person's identity and get access to the SQL data, then that's just as good for the attacker. Because in most cases, compromising the identity is again just a step towards the end goal. It doesn't matter if it's domain admin or just a user account. What matters is what can I get out of it. So another example might be when you see these scenarios where somebody compromises a CEO's account and will send a false email to the executive assistant saying, I'm on vacation, but I got this notification from company XYZ. Somehow there was a mix-up in finance, and we forgot to pay them this $10,000 bill. So please wire the money to number blah 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 blah. Right. So in that case, the domain admin was not compromised. The CEO may not have any special privileges on the network, but his identity was important in order to get to the data. Right. So we have to understand, that all these places along the way are a means of getting to the data. And so what we're going to talk about in this session has to do with devices. How are we protecting devices? How are we finding indicators of compromise on the devices? And how are we remediating vulnerabilities and weaknesses and issues that we see on those devices? And so Microsoft Defender ATP is a large component of that. But as you'll see, Microsoft Defender ATP integrates very closely with Microsoft Cloud App Security, which we talked about in the previous session. It also integrates very closely with Office 365. It integrates very closely with Azure ATP. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. So how does the approach that we use with Microsoft Defender and broadly speaking, more than just Defender, we're talking about advanced threat protection. So Microsoft Threat Protection is comprised of several different elements, right? So we have the identities. So we've got Azure Advanced Threat Protection, which helps to manage the protection of your identities that are in Azure or that are in your on-premise environment. So we can find those instances where someone is trying to compromise a user's identity. We have the second area, so endpoints. What kind of endpoints are we protecting? Maybe we're protecting a whole bunch of Windows 10 laptops. Maybe we're protecting a whole bunch of Azure VMs that are running Windows Server 2019. Maybe we're protecting an Azure IoT sensor that's running Raspberry Pi. Right? So the OS isn't terribly important in this case. What we care about is how do we protect that device, whatever it is, because it's connecting to the network. It's a threat because it has a compromise of that device gives an attacker a runway into your network. And from there, they can pivot, they can move laterally and so forth to get to the places that they really want to get to. User data. So how do we protect data in your email messages and Exchange or in documents that may be stored in SharePoint or OneDrive? How are we making sure that those are protected and secured? We talked about cloud app security and the ability to protect your data that lives in G Suite and Amazon and Dropbox and so on. That's another tool that we can use. And then lastly, we've got information or security tools within Azure Security Center that can help to protect our infrastructure. So whether we're talking about virtual machines or SQL, Azure SQL database, or a Mongo database, or whatever kind of things they might have in Azure, the networks that you have in Azure and on-prem. What are the things that Microsoft Threat Protection can provide that will give you that comprehensive security? Adrian mentioned earlier about the intelligence security graph, that it gets 6.5 to 7 trillion signals every day, and this is just the signals that are coming from Exchange. Okay, this is not from every Windows endpoint and every Windows server and every machine that's running Xbox and every application that Microsoft has. This is purely information that we get out of Exchange Online. So 6.5 trillion signals per day. So we have a lot of data, and what becomes very important is pulling all these pieces of data together into a format that allows us to see at a high level how an attack is progressing, right? Because again, we're not looking at a list of things to protect. We're looking at a graph of how an attack might progress. So it might start with a compromised identity that then leads to a compromised machine, which then leads to stolen data on SharePoint, where someone gets a password list, which then leads to a compromised database, right? So we have to think in terms of the big picture rather than islands of protection. Arg. All right, so from Defender's perspective, we have pretty broad coverage of the OSs that are fairly popular today. So obviously we cover Windows OSs from Windows 10 back to 7, Service Pack 1 if you're running like a Windows virtual desktop. You're able to continue running Windows 7. But we've got the server instances from 2019 back to 2012, and then cross-platform. So we support Mojave, High Sierra, and Sierra Mac OSs. We support Linux with third-party tools from Ziften, Bitdefender, and SentinelOne. And then we also support Android and iOS on Lookout. So Microsoft Defender did change its name not too long ago from Windows Defender to Microsoft Defender, and that was a purposeful change because it is no longer defending purely Windows. It's also defending these other OSs. So that becomes very important as you start thinking of ways that you can protect the mobile devices on your network, and as a means of bringing all those signals into a single pane of glass that allow you to make decisions about what attacks are taking place on your network and which devices are compromised. Okay, so let's take a quick look at how this works. Any questions before I move into the demo?
None in the chat window right now, David.
Okay. All right. So this is a demo, Tenant, obviously. And what I'm looking at here is the Microsoft Defender Security Center. So let me make this just a tad bigger. It's a little bit more visible. So at a very high level, these are some of the types of data that we can look at. So the first is your active alerts, and the active alerts are broken down into obviously low, medium, and high severity, and we are able to tell what type of activity generated that an alert. So there's a Mimikatz malware was detected, suspected credential theft activity. There's a credential theft tool that was executed in the network, and so on. And then the ranking of those activities. We also have the ability to run automated investigations within the tool. So if a behavior is observed on a particular machine that seems a little suspicious, you can initiate an automated investigation where we'll go through and look through all the files, all the registry settings, all the drivers, everything on the machine, and I'll show you this in a minute, and it will make a determination about whether there's anything to be concerned about on that machine that you need to take action on. Here's the automated investigation statistics. So how many automated investigations have been initiated, how many resulted in a remediation of an issue, and then things like average time to remediate. So this says 2 hours and 38 minutes, but you have to think about this in terms of what this actually means. So this 2 hours and 38 minutes is counting from the time that Microsoft Defender identifies an anomaly on a machine to the time that the admin says, yes, I want to initiate an automated investigation, to the point where the investigation has completed and a determination has been made, and you actually go through the process of remediating. All that is in that 2 hour and 38 minute time frame. So you'll see as we look at one of these automated investigations that the process of the automated investigation itself does not usually take this long, but it's the sum total of those different steps along the way that's being counted in here. We have an indicator of which machines are at risk and which ones are the highest risk. So for example, Barbara's PC has 13 high severity alerts, whereas Roberto and this MTP Air, they have fewer high severity alerts. But as we've I think proven over the last couple hours, it isn't simply machines that are compromised, it's also identities that are compromised. And that's what's being described here, which users are at risk. So if we see that Barbara Moreland, her user account is at risk, and that coincides with the fact that her PC was at risk. So something happened on her PC that would compromise or has the potential to compromise her identity. So it's putting those two pieces together. And so you can go in and look and see whose user accounts are at risk as well. So let's take a look at some of the details here. The first thing I want to take a look at is settings. So how do you deploy this thing? One of the things that's important to note is that this is a purely cloud-based service. So where your data is stored, you can make a determination about that, whether it's US, UK, or Europe, and then how long you want to retain that data. I don't have the ability to change those settings in this tenant, but in your tenant, you'd be able to do that. If I go into down here in the machine management and the onboarding section, here's where I have the ability to download packages or installation files that will allow me to install the Defender tool. So I pick the operating system that I want to install on. And again, you see the OSs that are available. So I can, for example, if I want to install this on a Linux server, I can download the onboarding package, run it on the Linux box, and then I have a detection test. So the detection test, if I run this, what this will tell me is whether the real-time protection in Microsoft Defender is turned on correctly. So it's going to look at the ICAR file, the ICAR text file that antivirus vendors use to validate whether their engine is working. This will tell us whether Microsoft Defender is turned on. I can run a script locally to install this locally if I want to do it manually, but I can also use any kind of configuration management tool. If I'm using Windows, I've got a bunch more options. I can deploy it through Group Policy or System Center. I can deploy it through Intune. I can have onboarding scripts for VDI environments and so on. So we give you instructions about how these things can be deployed for each type of OS. Okay. So once the thing is deployed, there's a couple very important features that I want to make sure that that you understand. Number one, if I go into advanced features, one of the things I've been talking about and trying to emphasize is the integration with the other tools in Microsoft's security toolset. So here's where that integration is configured. So for example, I've got Skype for Business integration, which also includes Microsoft Teams integration, and I'll show you where that becomes important in a minute. But here's where the integration is configured with Azure ATP. So we get information about data related to user identity compromises from Azure ATP, and so we're integrating with Defender in that way. Office 365 threat intelligence. So one of the things I'll show you here in a minute is a situation where a piece of malware was delivered through email to a desktop. The desktop was compromised, and now we want to find out what other mailboxes got that piece of malware. And so that's where that integration piece comes into play. The integration with Cloud App Security, we'll talk about that in a minute. Azure Information Protection. So using Microsoft Defender, we have the ability to identify Azure Information Protected documents and files on a user's workstation and protect them according to whatever policies we want. One of the things that most of you have probably seen quite extensively is Microsoft is using these scoring dashboards where you get a score according to how secure your environment is and so forth. And so what this is doing is Microsoft Defender is sending data to the broader Microsoft Secure Score that tells you, for example, how secure you are from an Office 365 perspective, from an Azure perspective, and then also from an endpoint perspective. So it's contributing to that overall score, but there's also a score specifically for Microsoft Defender ATP. There's a connection there to Intune that allows you to manage devices there and make sure that they are within compliance range and so forth. This is a piece, web content filtering. So we have the ability to apply web content filtering to user endpoints. And what this is going to allow is, for example, if I'm at home and I am on a corporate managed instance, or my organization is managing my install of Microsoft Defender, and they've got this web content filtering capacity or capability turned on, they can block me from home from going to gambling websites or porn websites or whatever websites they want to block me from. They have the ability to configure that on my endpoint, and so they don't have to force me through the corporate firewall or through some corporate proxy. This is done through a web-based tool that controls that access. Okay. So that's the integration pieces. I'll try to point those out as we go through some of these pieces, but let's get into the actual dashboards and some of the tools. So as mentioned, we went through the security operations. This is the security score, or the secure score, I should say. Well, that's not loading properly. All right, let's go to the machines
David, there's a
list.
question while you're working through
Oh,
that.
okay,
The
go
question
ahead.
is, so it's like a proxy, but at the endpoint.
Correct. Yeah. So essentially, what this is actually doing. So not only can you configure the the web filtering on the endpoint, but with the integration with Cloud App Security, you can say from the endpoint perspective, I'm not going to allow people to go to G Suite, or I'm not going to allow people to go use Trello, or I'm not going to allow people to use Facebook on my corporate managed machines, right? So you have the ability to block them from cloud applications, but you also have the ability to block them from specific websites or types of content. So Defender gives you that ability from both perspectives. Okay, so here I'm looking at the machine list. So this shows me the different machines, and I can filter according to which ones we're looking at over the course of a week, or however much time I want to look at. If I go to Barbara's machine as an example, there's some good information that I get here at a very high level. So the first thing I notice when I look at Barbara's machine is I can see which domain she's associated with, or if she's not associated with a domain, it'll show me whatever kind of work group configuration she might be in. If she's just a standalone machine, I get to see what kind of OS she's running, what the health state is of her machine, when the last time was she was seen on the network, and so on. I get some information about the risk level for her machine. We see that it's high. So we've got 26 active alerts in 2 different instances. So let's take a look. If we go into alerts, we've got some information, and this is probably one of the big reasons why we see that her machine is showing as high risk, and why her user account is showing as high risk, is because we've got suspected credential theft activity that's taking place. So if we click on that, we can see an instance where PowerShell was run here, and then Mimikatz was run. They did a Who Am I? They did a NetExe. So doing all the kind of stuff that you'd expect an attacker to perform as they're figuring out ways to pivot on the network. Going down to the incident graph, I see that her machine was the jumping off point to other machines as well. So using Mimikatz and using PowerShell, the attacker was able to launch an attack from Barbara's PC over to Roberto's PC and to Deborah's PC and to all these other machines on the network. They were able to make connections and compromise other PCs. This is classic how attackers work. They just pivot from machine to machine until they find an easy path to what they're trying to access. Okay, so this gives us some really good information about how we can proceed with our investigation. If I go back to machines, there's a couple pretty interesting things that I can also do here in within the machine. So if I go to, let's go to Lola's PC. And what I want to do here is I see that there's some active alerts, and I want to go here and I want to initiate a live response session. Now, you remember I had mentioned the ability to kick off an automated investigation. So if I see something that happened that seems suspicious to me, but I don't have clarity on what actually happened on the user's machine, I can initiate an automated investigation, and it will run through the process of trying to figure out what actually happened on that machine, and is it something I should be concerned about. But if I initiate a live response session, this happened to me yesterday too. I was trying to do this. So you can only run a single live response session per machine. And so if someone else is running a live response session, I can't run another one. And if they don't log off, then it just gets stuck. Let's see. See if I can find one where it's available. Okay, looks like this one will work. Okay, so what this is actually doing is creating a live connection to that machine and giving me access to some tools that I can use to investigate issues on this machine. So if I just do a help, these are some of the commands that I can run on this machine. So for example, I can do a find file, and I'll say notepad.exe. And so what it's going to go and do is find all the files on that machine and give me the paths to those files that show or that are named notepad.exe. But there's a lot more stuff I can do here. Obviously, just finding a file isn't all that important. But if I knew that there was, for example, a particular file that an attacker was using and that was an indicator of compromise on one of my machines, I could go and do a find file on some specific machines and see if that file existed on other machines, and then initiate remediation sessions with that machine. So now I've got the locations for all the instances of notepad.exe, and if that was an indicator of compromise, then I could perform some tasks against it. I can go in here and do persistence, so I can show all known persistence methods on the machine. So whatever a user might have done. So for example, did they set up a scheduled task? Did they set up something in the registry in the run the run part of the registry tree? So I can go in and do these types of performance, or I can perform these types of tasks to do some investigation on the network. Now I'm going to disconnect this when I'm done, but one of the other things I can do is upload a file to the library. So right now, if I go to library, and there might be some stuff in here already. So there's already some PowerShell scripts. So get the event log, run this NTFS info, run a master file table dump, get a mini dump, right? So all these scripts are already uploaded into this machine. But if I had another script that I wanted to upload, let's say, for example, I wanted to go to, let's do a mini dump again. I want to overwrite the existing one and confirm it. Now, whatever I have put in that mini dump script, that's going to get uploaded here. You'll see that the uploaded on time will change when I do a library again. It should show Thursday, March 19th. So there it is. The newer instance of my PowerShell script, and then I can run that PowerShell script, get the output from it, and do some investigation of what's in memory right now. So that's a pretty useful set of tools that you can use to investigate what's taking place on an individual machine and do some remote remediation and troubleshooting of that machine. This should be logging out. All right. If I go to threat and vulnerability management, I'm going to leave that behind. Not sure what. Anyway, let's go to the dashboard. Okay, so remember we talked about the scoring thing and how Microsoft loves using the scoring. So we've got a couple different scores here. Number one is your exposure score. So exposure score, this is one where you don't want to get a higher score. So the lower your score, the lower your exposure to threats and attacks. So right now I'm at 51, so I'm a little bit more vulnerable than 50-50. But I'm not in the high range, which is better than being there. So so as I take actions to reduce this score, then you'll see this arrow going down closer to 0. I don't want it going up. I've also got configuration scores. So this takes into account a variety of different things. So what applications are installed on a machine, what operating system is running, do I have the latest versions of Windows 10? Am I still running Windows 7? What kind of networking controls do I have in place? What accounts are found on the machines? What security controls are in place as well? So if I go over here, these are some of the things that I can take action on to reduce my exposure score. So they give me 73 total recommendations. Here's 5 of them. So if I go to this one, update RARlab WinRAR to version, whatever it is, 5 something probably, 5.80, right? I have the ability to see, first of all, which machines are vulnerable and that need to have this version updated. So I see the exposed ones. I see also the entire list of machines that have WinRAR installed, right? So some of them have the current version and some don't. For those of you that like to track CVEs, it shows me which CVEs are addressed by updating to the proper version, and then which remediation activities have been approved or that are still in process. So let's say I want to remediate this issue. I go to remediation options, and I don't have permissions in this tenant to do anything, but I have the ability to, for example, open a ticket in Intune and define the priority for performing this task, when I need it done by, and then submit the request. If I go to open software page, this is going to give me some information about WinRAR. And this particular thing doesn't have a whole lot of detail, but it gives me some information about how many vulnerabilities exist and what their priority is, and how many devices on my network are exposed because of this threat. So the software inventory is pretty useful. So this is going and looking through all the applications that are installed on my network, and I can look at things like, is an exploit available? Okay, so let's take a look at and see which ones have exploits available. So I can go in here and I can say for Flash Player, look at this little bug, and it'll say there's a privilege escalation exploit that's publicly available for one of the weaknesses that's been identified. And so that gives me an idea of how I want to prioritize the remediation of this issue on my network. So I can see it as being maybe a higher threat than other situations. Okay. Going down to weaknesses. This is looking at the individual CVEs and what software it's related to, how old it is, and you can kind of get a feel for how much impact it's going to have on your network. All right. If I go to incidents, now here's where stuff starts to get pretty interesting. If I just look at the ones that happened within the last week, and I go to, let's go to this this incident, and of course these are staged incidents, but you get the idea of what's taking place. So an incident is a collection of alerts. So there's a whole bunch of activities that took place on a given machine or set of machines that are all tied together into a single alert, or into a single incident, I should say. So all these actions were performed on a machine, and they contributed to a single incident. So let's take a quick look at one of the alerts. So I've got PowerShell dropped a suspicious file on the machine. Are there any questions, Don? Nothing? Okay. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to just pop in. I'm happy to break away for a second.
Although I did have to Google CVE.
Oh, okay. Common vulnerability, something I can't remember.
Exposure. Yeah. Maybe I'm not the only one. If you Googled it or searched for it yourself, chime in the chat window.
Yeah. I can't remember if it's common vulnerability or critical vulnerability. I can't remember. Either way. Okay, so it says the PowerShell dropped a suspicious file on the machine. Now, what's interesting about this is that it shows me the executable it ran, PowerShell, and it tells me the command line that was actually run. So in this case, I see that PowerShell was run, it was hidden, it ran in bypass execution mode, and then I get all the information about the the base 64 encryption of the file and so on. And going all the way down to the bottom, I see what that PowerShell command did. Okay, so if I get down here, it tells me that, here we go, it set up a new scheduled task. Okay, so that's a classic indicator of compromise that an attacker will set up a scheduled task that runs on a periodic basis, whether it's something that moves data from one place or another, or that reinstalls some piece of software in case it gets removed by antivirus or whatever it is. These scheduled tasks are typical tools that an attacker will use to maintain persistence on a network device. Okay, so now I know what's been done. I see that they've run this PowerShell script. I lost my mouse. There it is. All right, now let's take a look at this particular alert in a little bit more detail. So it tells me that this was run on Lola's PC. Tells me what time it first saw activity, and then it gives me the alert process tree. So how did things progress to the point where it dropped this file on the machine? So we see that service host was run. The service host is pretty common. WinWord.exe was initiated, so that's just Microsoft Word. And then Word opened this document called WinATP intro invoice draft.docm. When that document was opened, PowerShell was initiated, so there's some piece of malware embedded in the document that kicked off PowerShell, and when it did, it installed this backdoor.exe onto the machine, which then kicked off the creation of a scheduled task. So then again, we get the incident graph, like I showed you before. How did Lola's PC interact with all these other machines? Well, it interacted with quite a few of them, so much that they're kind of jumbled all together. If I go in here to the document itself, this gets kind of interesting. Okay, so here I see I've got hashes of the file, so I can verify the if there are variations of the file, that if it's morphing in some way, I can see if there's different hashes. But here's where it gets kind of neat. So this file has been observed on 4 machines in my organization in the last 30 days, 800 machines worldwide. But notice also that it's been identified in 3 of the email boxes in my environment. Okay, so there are 3 mailboxes that also have this document in them. So that's a point of concern for me. I want to make sure that other people don't open this document and get this backdoor dropped on them. So I go in here to open in Office 365. And remember, this is made possible because of that integration, that little slider that I showed you in the settings with Office 365 Threat Intelligence. Make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so it's looking for the attachment with that hash, right? So it's looking for that specific document, and it found the document was delivered to one mailbox and blocked at one mailbox and then blocked at another mailbox. This is by date, right? Or by time specifically. So I see the three mailboxes that it was sent to. It had slightly different subject lines in the mailboxes, and it was treated a little bit different. So in the one instance, it was delivered to the inbox, and that was to baymorel@mtpdemos.net. So that was sent to the user's mailbox, and that's probably what we saw, the one where it was compromised. But then we see other instances where it was actually blocked and quarantined. So we identified it as being a piece of malware later on and prevented it from getting to other user mailboxes. So just to be on the safe side, what I could do is go in here to the ones where it was blocked and quarantined, and I could check the boxes and say the action I want to take is hard delete it, right? Just completely delete the thing because we know it's a piece of malware. We don't need to keep it. There's nothing we need to do there. So that shows the integration between Microsoft Defender and Office 365 threat intelligence. All right. So scooting back here to the, whoops, did I miss it somewhere? Okay. One last thing I want to show you before I kind of run out of time here is the advanced hunting. So if you have a security operations center that needs to look for indicators of compromise, and needs to look for types of behaviors that are an indicator that there's something going on your network that's inappropriate or that shouldn't be happening, you can use these advanced hunting queries. Now, you can use the schema here to build your own queries, but there are also a lot of them out there, for example, on GitHub and in the tech communities where people are building these queries and sharing them out to others. So for example, in here, I've got some queries that are related to threat and vulnerability management. What I'm going to do is click on this query. This is going to show me all machines that have an active alert with a high or critical CVE and a public exploit. So this is using what's called Cousteau query language. So Cousteau query language is kind of similar in format to SQL, but it's a little bit easier to use in my opinion. It's a little bit more logical. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and run the query. It's going to run against the endpoints in my environment, and then it's going to show me the endpoints that match that criteria, that have an active alert and a higher critical CVE. And so I've got some that are listed here. So these machines match that query. If I now go and click on the alert ID, now I can see what was actually run. And in this case, it's the same one that we were just looking at. It's the that Word document that had the PowerShell and the scheduled tasks and so on. But it gives me some information to work with. Let me think of what else we can do here. So there's the ones that you can find yourself, but like I said, there's also a number of them on GitHub that you can pull from. These are just a couple that were added to this profile, but you can build your own. For example, you can look for grabs all files that were written to the USB drive, right? This one looks for use of PowerShell, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can look up, and you can use these to kind of build your own types of queries and modify them as necessary, and they'll help you to find those indicators of compromise on your network. I think that's about all I've got time for, but let me just see if there's anything in here that I want to point out. If there's any questions, please feel free to raise them now before I drop off.
Any questions out there? We'd love to hear from the attendees remaining in the session.
While I'm waiting, go ahead. Sorry.
So what I would say is, and certainly feel free to put the comments in the chat, but a lot of people don't necessarily know that these capabilities even exist within Microsoft Technologies. I'd love to know if this is new for people, or they knew this existed, things like that. Because I don't know, in your travels, David, if you find that people don't really realize that Microsoft's a security company.
Yeah. I would say that most people think of Microsoft Defender as a joke, because probably 6 years ago it was, but now it is up in the top right-hand corner of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. It is viewed as one of the top security tools on the market. It has improved dramatically. Let me just show this one more thing while people chew on some questions. This threat analytics, what this is doing is looking at different threats that exist in my network, whatever they were, and then I can get information about those types of threats. So in this case, it's looking at the high impact threats, but I can also look at the latest ones. I'm going to look at this living off the land binaries, because this shows that there are machines with active alerts related to this type of a threat. Okay, so if I click on that, it's going to give me some information about this type of attack. It's going to show me how this type of attack is perpetrated, I guess is the word. So how people leverage these types of tools in an attack. So they use Netcat and using PowerShell, where PowerShell is installed on a machine, they'll use that as a type of tool that they'll use. How we detect it, how you mitigate this type of attack. And so this is the kind of thing that can help you to, when you're talking maybe to like your change management group or your security group, you can tell them these are the things that we need to fix, and this is why. This is what can be done, how severe an issue this is, and it just puts some context around the threat itself, rather than just pointing to a CVE. This gives you a lot of detail that can go like to an executive to help them understand the seriousness of an issue.
So, David, we've got a question from Christopher. Christopher, would you like to come off mute? Maybe even turn your camera on and ask the question?
Camera.
Nobody wants to
try this part anyway. I don't have limited internet here at the house. So, basically, my question is, how does well, to start, I didn't know the Defender had this type of functionality in it, and just how does it compare with like a Carbon Black or a CrowdStrike Falcon host?
Yeah, so there's a lot of similarities, and you probably, as I went through like some of these incidents, you saw similarities between like the incident graph and what's available. Like in CrowdStrike, they have a similar type of thing where you can see the how an attack was spread to other machines. We go here. Right, the alert, this type of thing. This is similar to what's in CrowdStrike. You're asking a Microsoft guy, so I'm going to say that we're at least comparable. There's definitely things that are within each tool that are unique. I would say that the integration with Office and with Cloud App Security and with Azure ATP makes Microsoft Defender a much more comprehensive tool than a CrowdStrike or Carbon Black could be, because they're looking at an endpoint only, right? They're not looking at how this how a user's identity was compromised, or how the piece of malware got into the network to begin with. So there's a lot more capabilities within Defender than I think in the ones that you mentioned. But I mean, we can have a discussion. You can have a discussion with the folks at Synergy, and I'm happy to join in the discussion and provide more technical detail about the differences. I just don't want to do it in this context, if that's okay.
I will say at the highest
that's
level,
fine.
Chris,
Thank
at the link I just shared of thinking of Microsoft as a cybersecurity company, just at the higher levels, there's a Forrester and a Gartner link there where Microsoft is either exceeding or comparable to the vendors that you named.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. I'll take a look at it.
this is great, David. I had the same question. This is John Leonard. I had the same question I did at the ISC Squared Raleigh meeting yesterday, which is, how does this, you've covered threat hunting. How briefly, you kind of alluded to the change management people, but how would the other people in the NIST framework use the sort of the different workspaces, if you will, in Microsoft Defender? So the threat hunter is in the identify space, but somebody at the front end and at the back end of in the recovery piece. Do they have like similar capabilities that are not shown here? If you could just briefly allude to that.
So are you talking about the article that I sent you yesterday?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. So what John is asking about is what our compliance stance is with NIST regulations and so on. So if you just do a quick search for NIST and Microsoft 365 compliance, there's actually quite a few. Let me see if I can find the. I can't remember if it's this one. Quite a few. Yeah, here we go. So we have documentation around all the different, many of the different regulations related to different U.S. government and global and local types of compliance regulations, and in many cases we have specific information about how, for example, Office 365 or Azure complies with NIST or some of these other regulations. So if you have questions about that, this is a good place to go. The other place you can go is servicetrust.microsoft.com. And at Service Trust, this is where you remember earlier today, Adrian made reference to Compliance Manager, and Compliance Manager used to be accessed through servicetrust.microsoft.com. I guess technically you can still get there that way, but that's not the preferred path. So once this pulls up, this shows things like different regulations that we comply with, different security protocols that we have implemented within Azure and Office 365 and so on. There's also, if you go into, let me pull this up real quick. I'm going to pull up a different tenant, and I hope I can find this quickly. if you go into an Office 365 tenant, there is a place where you can request access to a variety of different documents that Microsoft has made available to our customers that define like which pen test, or when was the last time we did a pen test on Office 365? When was what's our policy related to running pen tests against Azure from your own organization? Are you allowed to do that? Let me just think here while I type.
Right, David. Right, David.
Yeah.
And so what I was asking was, does the Defender have those same kind of graphics that would assist the pen tester with the in sort of a similar workspace as you were showing earlier?
Say that one more time. Would the pen tester have access to the same graph?
Right, exactly. Yeah, a similar, or is that included in Defender?
So let me make sure I understand your question. So are you asking, would the attacker be able to see this?
No, I mean I'm talking about folks that are in different roles outside of threat hunters, sort of using a similar workspace in Defender.
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. Maybe I'm just a little thick.
No,
right
that's
now.
okay. That's okay. No, I what I'm saying is that are there different sort of adjacent workspaces for the different people as you move along the the threat vector is really what I'm asking.
So like are there different views for different roles within the security operations?
Exactly.
Okay. So I believe you can do that in the settings roles. So you get the just readers. You've got the administrators. So you can define your own groups, right? So you can give them visibility into different aspects of the security center. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, cool. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm. Yeah. So
okay. So sorry, it took me a second to kind of get my brain.
No, that's okay. I wasn't totally clear. Thanks.
Okay. So the thing that I was pointing out is the ability to within your admin center. So I was talking about where you can get these, the compliance reports and things like pen test reports and that sort of thing. So let me see if I can remember exactly where that setting is. And I'm probably not going to remember.
So my snarky little thing there is, if Microsoft left them in the same places, we wouldn't have to search all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with that. Okay, reports, security and compliance.
So true.
Okay. Oh, okay, so they moved them. They're now on the reports dashboard.
I'm glad the Microsoft pros have the same opinion I do.
Yeah.
So you can get to this. You don't have to have Office 365 in order to get to these reports. You can spin up a demo tenant or it's a trial tenant and still get access to them. You just have to. It's access through the tenant. That's all this is. All right. So if I go down here to reports for download. Phooey. Am I remembering it in the wrong place? I can't remember where it is, but there, in theory, is a place where you can find these documents. and download them that are related to like I said, pen testing and compliance with all the different banking regulations and HIPAA and all that kind of stuff. I'm just blanking on where it is. Any other questions? So I didn't actually finish my presentation, but I think we kind of walked through most of it. The other thing I wanted to show you is so the settings within Microsoft Defender can also be used as criteria for conditional access. So I talked about conditional access on the previous session. So the configuration of the device and the health of the device can be used as criteria for conditional access. We saw the synchronization of actions between Office 365, where you saw the ability to see what was in the email based on the action that took place in Windows Defender. This was something I didn't get a chance to show you, is the ability within Microsoft Defender to look at Azure Information Protection or Microsoft Information Protected documents on a given workstation. And then lastly, the integration with Cloud App Security on your endpoint. So you have the ability to control users' access to these applications based on your management of them in Microsoft Defender. And that brings me to the end. I'm only 15 minutes over time. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Dave.